Everyone, please.
And I will mute all here. Where's my mute all? There you go. Oh, but I need to make sure that Jamie and Roberta are muted here. Just a second here. Oh,
I can unmute I unmuted myself. Jamie,
and Jamie,
can unmute.
Jamie, unmute yourself as well. I'm sorry, I'm looking down for your name.
Okay.
No worries.
Thank you so
We got
much.
it.
All right, guys.
We got it.
There you go.
All righty. Well, it's my honor and pleasure to introduce you to Jamie Davidson. I'm going to read a little bit of her bio, but I met Jamie sort of through out of Chicago, the online seminars that they had in 2020. And I was so impressed with her presentation that I signed up for one of her workshops, and then I liked it so much I signed up for 2 more workshops. So I went to 3 of her workshops last year, and they were great. She's a great instructor, a great person, 2-time cancer survivor. And her bio says, and I'm not going to read all of it, Jamie is an award-winning freelance outdoor and nature photographer with a passion for capturing and sharing the intimate moments and beauty of the natural world on its own as it blends with the rest of the world. Her images range from macro and abstracts to intimate, grand, and rural landscapes. She connects with all things old and finds a special beauty in decay and fading cultural lifestyles that resonate a life of hard work. She also loves doing flowers. She's a Lens Baby ambassador. She does a lot of interpretive work. Her goals as an instructor are to encourage and inspire and help people grow in their photography skills, connect with their subjects, and see beyond the obvious so they can discover their own visual voice. She's been an instructor presenter with Out of Chicago, CanAm Conference, NANPA, CNPA, Mike Moats, and more. So, ladies and gentlemen, and all 48 people, Jamie Davidson, take it away.
Cool. It sounds like you've read the whole thing. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to share my screen and
Oops, you just muted yourself, Jamie. Press the space bar or press the unmute.
oh no, there we go. All right, let's try this. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Am I muted
Yes.
still?
Yes.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay. If for some reason you can see the top and bottom of my screen, I apologize. Just try and ignore the toolbars. Anyway, again, thank you, Roberta, for reading most of my introduction, and very happy to be here. Very honored to be a part of sharing Wabi Sabi and finding beauty in imperfection. It's kind of one of those things that for whatever reason, is a natural part of how I see the world, is to find the good in the not so great. So Wabi Sabi is a concept that resonates with me a lot. And it doesn't matter what I'm photographing. So hopefully throughout this program, you will see how I tie it into just about any type of subject. And if we could just get one of these slides moving, that'd be great. Okay, so Leonard Cohen said that Wabi Sabi is a beauty of things imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. It is a beauty of things modest and humble. It is a beauty of things unconventional. So as we go through this program, just keep those in mind, those 3 ideas of imperfection, impermanent, and incomplete. If we take those and we tie them into just us as human beings, that is what we are. So it's a universal concept on many levels. But it comes from a Japanese aesthetic based on those same things, and it's a way of honoring everything that is impermanent. And as we are, always in a state of change. So, you know, what is beautiful? Well, beautiful is something that is pleasing to the senses or the mind aesthetically. And for many people, you know, flowers, moths, butterflies, those types of things are the things that you might think of initially as where you would find beauty. And those are obvious places. But Wabi Sabi is a little bit different in that, number one, it has its roots in the Japanese tea ceremony and the Buddhist priests from the 15th century. But it is, it's sort of a combination of yin and yang, in and out. So the Wabi part of it refers to a way of life and a spiritual path, more of the inward, the subjective. And where you might see that is in understated rustic elegance and natural simplicity, more about space. And then the Sabi relates to the material objects, the outward, the objective, and the temporal things. So nodding to imperfection and to seeing the beauty in flaws that come with age. So this is just an example in infrared of a Japanese garden here in North Carolina at Duke Gardens, and you know, just sort of reflecting the natural elements organized in concert with the nature. What Wabi Sabi is not, you've got what it is and what it is not. So the Wabi Sabi is more of your live or dead things, wild things in nature, things that are falling apart, things you might find in thrift stores and arts and crafts, more handmade and natural, you know, clotheslines, for example, weathered wood, that type of thing. Your flowers, your cherry blossoms and roses, not necessarily in the Wabi Sabi category. Anything that is formally arranged does not fall in that category. Anything that is refined, really, is not the Wabi Sabi. So think about things that are have a bit of age to them. And that's more in the Wabi Sabi. This is just an image from Lewis Ginter Botanical Garden in Richmond, and they have a Japanese garden area, and it just feels in that Oriental Asian Japanese flavor. So some of the things that that you might think of in terms of life metaphors here, I'm not going to read all of them, but prevailing thoughts related to overlooked beauty, brokenness, things that are not perfect, everything that does not last, simplicity, repurposing things, again, imperfection, impermanence, and things that are just sort of in the moment. Nothing lasts. Everything is transient. Leonard Cohen also said this, ring the bells that still can ring, forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And so when I think of this, here, when I looked at cracked pots with broken branches, leaves that are fallen on the ground, that's kind of where I see light coming in. And it's just a different way of looking at the world. But it's that nothing in life is perfect. It may seem that way, but it's not. And so how do we see that beauty that is below the surface? One of the things we have to do is we have to let go of that idea of being perfect and that something will be around forever. I can tell you that letting go of perfect for me took a long time, and there's still a lot of that still in me, and we're just sort of, we grow up, I think, on some level. I guess maybe some of us who are old enough, and I feel like I'm old enough to have been in the age where nothing we do should be sloppy or haphazard. So here's just an example of, the aging, the beauty in the decay and the impermanence, and yet still there's a spider web that comes into the picture. But when I saw this sign, "Do it right the first time," immediately I thought, well, how did my father get in this place? This was down in Georgia. And this is a concept that I grew up hearing, which is part of that perfection. Do it right or don't do it at all is what I heard. And so from a personal perspective, there were a lot of things that I didn't do because I didn't feel that I could do them perfectly. And so that perfection part really is sort of a barrier to opening up doors and windows of opportunity and possibility, and not only the opportunity to succeed, but the opportunity to fail. Was in a church in my neck of the woods, and one of the ladies that was with us, she could play the organ. And so I'm reading all the names of the keys, and she's playing, and I'm going, oh my gosh, there's a perfection key. What does it sound like? I thought, well, I've heard about perfection my whole life. So what does perfection sound like to this designer of the organ? Well, she pulled the perfection out, and it was broken. So I guess just a little nudge to all of us to remember that perfection is broken. It's impossible. And the thing that I have learned is to do my best, because the best that we do always leaves room for incremental improvement. And talk about broken and imperfect. For whatever reason, again, my husband seems to have a way of finding imperfect cats. And so we've rescued several, and both of them seem to have these missing eyes, or eyes that eventually went missing. They are not perfect. Their vision is not perfect, and yet they exist in this world, and they're happy as can be. And I think that we can learn a little bit of something from these one-eyed, three-legged, whatever it is, animals who exist in the world and move on without that perfection being a barrier to living a good life. Thinking about photographing flowers, for example, when spring comes and everything is in bloom, a lot of times we tend to look for, where is that perfect flower, the one that has everything going for it, from color, no blemishes, and the whole 9 yards. Well, at the edge of seasons, in the time frame of bloom seasons, we don't find very many perfect blooms. And so I'm sort of drawn to these imperfect elements, and there's a lot of beauty that I feel can be found in the thing that is not 100% right on. Here's the most beautiful, the most perfect thing that you can photograph. So I embrace these broken flowers and the petals that are gone and the bent everything. Marc Chagall said, if I create from the heart, nearly everything works. If from the head, almost nothing. And this image was taken when I was absolutely stuck in a field of daffodils. There were thousands of them. And this is where I'm looking for, just there's so many. I'm overwhelmed, number one. But number two, I'm looking for the best one out of thousands. So, take on that challenge. So one of the things that I do, and maybe this will help you in the process, is when I get stuck and overwhelmed, I sit down. Be still, and kind of take everything in, and then anticipate that if I do that, I will be one of these flowers, for example, will say, "Yoo-hoo, look at me." And so this one did. And inside of this was a heart inside the daffodil. It's the only one I've ever seen, but now that I know that it exists, I look in every one that I'm around to just see if I can't find it. But the message here from the quote is, work with your heart and not with your head, trying to find the exact daffodil that you can do the most amazing thing with. Find one that speaks to you, and it comes together. In terms of Wabi Sabi and being able to embrace that concept, I think it starts with some mindfulness, mindful attention. So when we go out to photograph, quieting the expectations that we're going to see A, B, and C, quiet the expectations that the light is going to be and it needs to be just so. Quieting the judgments is a little bit more challenging, because a lot of times what I myself have and I hear others do is judging not only the environment, but taking on judgment within themselves. So, I can't do this. This is not going to look right. Somebody else won't like it. No one will like it. It won't win. The whole gambit of judging that goes on in your head. So quiet those. And then the last thing is to just simply slow down. And with that quiet mind and with a more mindful approach, begin to notice things. And when you do that, you will be able to, on some level, find the beauty in the imperfect moments, in the imperfect subjects, etc. But also, this is a phrase I use, and I don't believe I've used it before in this program, but learn how to make the lemonade. In a more expressive way. Make the damn lemonade, right? We're not always presented with perfect opportunities. So find a way to twist the imperfect into something that is beautiful on some level. This is an example of doing that. So I don't know about anyone else, but if you've ever gotten up for sunrise, we go with this expectation that there's going to be beautiful color, the clouds and the whole 9 yards, and it's all going to be, oh, yay. And I've gotten up at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's cold, the whole gamut of things that we do to get ready to photograph sunrise, with the hopes that we're faced with something that's pretty amazing. That wasn't the case here. Pretty low key, pretty unimpressive. And so in terms of that, making the lemonade and finding beauty in this very non-committal sunrise, the sun came up, but not a whole lot else. What I did is, instead of just packing it up and leaving because it was a dud sunrise, is what I would call it, and it was not based on my expectations more than anything, I switched gears and did a very slow motion blur on a tripod and just slowly moved the camera back and forth ever so slightly, no dramatic moves, and created this wash of very muted color. So that's finding that beauty in what really was nothing like what I was hoping for. Opening our minds to imperfection and possibility. So we do have to look at things that are ordinary and things that are broken and things that are rusted and paint peeling and those types of things. It's not just all in nature, but there's a lot of Wabi Sabi and imperfection to be found in nature as well. But I'm going to share with you a series of, imperfect stories. This being one of them, a shutdown gas station. Broken glass that was part of a painting on the glass. If you've never been to Old Car City, USA in White, Georgia, this is a place that is just filled to the brim with Wabi Sabi subjects. This is just one of my favorite vehicles to visit. And not only is there, beauty in this imperfection, but look at even the cracks in the glass, all of the growth. So even within this one image, there is even more where you can find that concept. This was a crashed, a wrecked shrimper. And it was there for a long time. This was down in Apalachicola area. It is now gone, but the lemonade was going there, and the sun is set, and a little bit of the night sky, and just finding beauty in someone else's misery. I hate to say, but there it was. Here's another example of Wabi Sabi in high key after storms in the Outer Banks. There's a lot of broken docks and whatnot, and this is just one of them. So it was not a colorful sky. It was very white, grayish day, and just taking it and twisting it around for high key, finding the beauty there. This is a pier that no longer exists, but was like a mecca for photographers for this brokenness. If this pier was perfect and everything was in place, it would not ever have attracted the kind of attention that was given to it. I actually photographed it on the last weekend before it was torn down. So that reflects the impermanence. Not only was this pier on its way out anyway, but somebody else finished that story. So expectations, right? We plan trips, and we want fall color to be what it looks like in all of the images that we've seen. Everybody else who's been to, for example, West Virginia and Glade Creek Gristmill, we want those colors to be present when we go there. Well, it doesn't always work that way, because we're not in charge of fall color. We're not in charge of what nature does or doesn't do. And so again, that lemonade, I think that's part of the way to approach this imperfection. So the color, when I went to Glade Creek Grist Mill at Babcock State Park, was fine, but it wasn't hugely brilliant. And so what I did to modify was use multiple exposures and also motion blurs as a way of taking the sparsely colored areas of the forest and making them something different. Even here, it's not full bloom, not full color everywhere, but we do what we do with what we're presented with. And so here is, I hate to keep saying it, but this was a dud sunset. There was nothing really happening. The color was very blah. It was just very uneventful. And so what I decided to do was to change gears from trying to create this beautiful landscape with the sunset, and again took it a little bit further in terms of the speed of the motion on the marshes, but made it a motion blur. And the key here for me was just to get that mound of marsh in the right position for what I wanted. In the back was part of the sunset. It was okay, but not what I was hoping for. You can find Wabi Sabi and beauty in the old and abandoned. So here are some examples of that. This little fish house is no longer. One of the storms took it out. This was on Bald Head Island in North Carolina. Old farmhouses. This is in infrared. Not perfect, but something about it just speaks to me in terms of its crookedness, and where on the door there used to be a wreath, so it reflects that it used to be a small home, enough, but with enough value to its occupants that we have old curtains in there, but that it would be decorated with a wreath. A now abandoned picnic area in the Blue Ridge. an old church in Eastern North Carolina. All of this is just bare and barren wood. But to me, what was so beautiful about it was how that light is streaming in on the ceiling and bouncing all over the place. So very rustic, very unrefined, and yet there it was. This was called the Gathering House or Bolden Lodge down near Darien, Georgia. I think it's missing now, but you can see very rustic, unrefined, and yet beautiful. We have a lot of old, abandoned, small houses in Eastern North Carolina in the rural areas, and I find them very appealing for what they were, for what they represent, and also for kind of watching, like I say, that fading rural life, just wandering off. This is another, and a little bit more, farming, a lot of farms in all areas of the country, but especially what I'm noticing here in Eastern North Carolina, the farmland is being sold and developed for houses. And so rural landscapes are in that vein of Wabi Sabi. Hopefully we'll still have lots of farms, but they are going away and they are being sold. And so every time I see barns and buildings and anything that reflects that life, I'm going to stop and photograph it. Here's that same house that you saw earlier in a different season. This this is in Saxis, Virginia, yes, and it used to be a fish house. It's gone, but there's beauty in those old pilings, and made to me even more beautiful with a long exposure and infrared. No longer used, and yet, here it is. Another example. The thing I like about this, again, is that same thing. We've got sort of this contradiction of the dead end road. It's an old barn, and yet somebody found enough beauty in it to decorate that really rustic door with a straw hat. And then there's the area of industry. So we probably are all aware on some level of how a lot of industry that used to be here in the United States is no longer, particularly in North Carolina and in the South. The fabric industry, the denim mills, and all of that is not here anymore. And so this is a remnant of a grist mill that is down in Georgia. And some of these images that follow, so that's that same building in a different perspective. But then here we have in a part of the denim mill, actually, the industrial side of the denim mill, where things are left. You probably have some places like that where you are, but things are left in place. So this old rusted chair at a work area left, the denim mill's closed, and here we have this, which hasn't moved in forever. And then here's just sort of a flip and a flop on what I saw, which is on the left, and then what I felt on the right. So I'm looking at the color, I'm looking at the light. Those are strands of denim threads hanging down. And so this is the remnants and the remains of what once was a vibrant mill that made things and that employed people. And that chair, I think it's been moved multiple times in the several visits that I've had to this mill. But the image on the right really reflects more of how I felt in looking at that. So a little bit more moody and a little bit darker, and yet still with the colored lights coming in that I find very beautiful. Another view of that same floor. A lot of things left the way they are, a lot of broken windows, peeling paint, but there's just something that is very appealing to me in peeling paint. This is a way, this is not necessarily what I would consider a Wabi Sabi image, but it's in a Wabi Sabi place. So this mill is now being used in the town as an event space. So part of it is left as it was, and part of it is being used so that it's bringing a little bit of life back and allows for preservation of this place that meant so much to this town. This is Lindale Mill in Lindale, Georgia. So it's a way of balancing. Those little hanging lights are not part of the Wabi Sabi concept. That blue sofa is not, but everything else is mostly how it was. And within that same mill, I found these huge boxes of what are spindles. The thing that attracted me to these spindles especially was, number one, they were part of how the denim was made, but also that it says American paper and made in USA. So that for me really resonated. And so I was able to take a bunch of these home with permission. And so I've created some images that reflect my connection to this place that, that is meaningful to me. So I just said, well, what can I do? These are, you know, from the denim mill. And so here's just sort of connecting all of the dots. All Wabi Sabi, those spindles are very old. They will never be used again. They're scratched up, and they come from a place that will never be used again according to its original purpose. And then beauty in nature on the edge. So think about edges of seasons, you know, the changing seasons. The end of summer, a lot of the flowers are, you know, and gardens that you might go to, unless they're really highly cultivated, there's not a lot happening, not a lot going on. In the fall and the transition between fall and winter, same thing happens. And then we have winter, and it depends on where you are, but your color for winter can be all kinds of things from very white to very brown, which is mostly what I have here in the South. But on the edge of seasons, leaves that have fallen in brown grasses, butterflies and moths who have seen better days. But with this, I see a rabbit in the edge of this torn wing. And there's also a couple other characters inward. But this, you know, I don't know. There's something that I find beautiful in what it represents. Edge of a season, the poppies have done their thing, and yet still beautiful. Butterfly with a broken wing. The swallowtail is missing one of its tails. And then an old stone wall with nature just sort of emanating from a very, very old wall. So there's a balance of new and old. Edge of a season here reflected. And then this is a little bit more personal in terms of the image and what it represents for me. But again, dead fern, dead pine needles, and pine cones. A very quick sharing of what this means to me. I was up in Canada with Freeman Patterson. I'm on his property, and we have a time frame, and y'all know about, you know, we have X amount of time to photograph, and so there's high pressure, and pressure mostly that we apply to ourselves especially, but I wasn't seeing anything. And here, the first thing, when I sat down, the first thing I saw was the dead fern. And I go, oh, well, that's really appropriate because I'm creatively dead. Then I noticed the pine cones, and the pine cones then represented a change and something that would be new. It could be another pine tree in the future. So it was deadness and potential for life. And I put this together, and for me, it represents sitting down and listening to my own words, but also me finding beauty in what may not appear obvious to anyone else. It would just walk past all the dead ferns and the dead pine and say, yeah, this is not very exciting. So, just giving you ideas in terms of slowing down and seeing potential in not so obvious ways. And then in terms of things that are weathered, so of course, Wabi Sabi and Old Car City and rust, perfect examples of that concept. So here we have these are some examples from Old Car City. And again, without like pounding it into your head, obviously I'm sharing these under the concept of Wabi Sabi, but I stop because I find something beautiful in each one of these scenes, whether it's macro or close up or a bigger scene. And it's the undercurrent. So the cracked paint, the rust, the change of the season, remembering when you could have little keyholes like that, and you could flip them open. And I really wanted either one of these to stay flipped open, and it just wasn't working for me. The Edsel especially was fun for me because I didn't learn until much later that my father had an Edsel, and I so wished that he had kept it because they didn't make very many, and I would have had a cool subject. But here it is in Old Car City. Edge of season, rust, the whole gamut of, again, me finding something beautiful in this, which means that I have to commit myself to that. And for me, it's a very easy commitment. I did not place those leaves there. That's how I found them. Everything there was as I found it. But there's so much beauty in the old cars. They were just, to me, had so much artistic design and flair and character. And I think that's why I love them so much. It's because we don't see that. I don't see that in what we drive around with. So that's in rust. And then another area that I'm attracted to in terms of subjects is the coastal influences. I live near the coast, and I have a real affinity for hard work. My father was self-employed. He did fiberglass boat repair, and he was the hardcore perfectionist, but he worked really hard. And that's what fishermen and seamen do, is that they're not working on beautiful pieces of equipment, but what they do reflects that life of hard work. And for me, I find that beautiful. So that's some of what you're going to see in this series. And I also love, just as a side note, the names of the fishing vessels. So on the left, you've got addiction. That's actually an infrared image in false color. But get her done, interpreted. The name of this boat, this is in, I don't know if it's still there, but it was in Chincoteague. The name of this boat is Relentless. And this was in the middle of probably the coldest temperatures that I've experienced in a very, very long time. But it was still there the last time. So look at, there's nothing that someone might look at and say, well, yeah, it's a bunch of nets and, dirty clothing and everything's rusted, but that's the Wabi Sabi concept, finding beauty in that. down in Darien, Georgia. Parts and pieces. Not only reflecting this scene in, making it look like an old image, but, if we just look, there's Mary and Clyde and Little Bo, and I can't even read some of those others, but they reflect the Wabi Sabi concept in a big way. And then these are just little snippets of what you might find on some of these boats. Again, that same idea. Here's Relentless in a different position in a different season.
Is that one and the other one before it, two back, you put textures on those?
Yeah, this here was very foggy. So it was a very white sky. And so this has a texture applied to it. And the other one was infrared, black and white. And then finding beauty in the simple things. So a rowboat, for example. Your fishing piers along the coast in black and white. Passage of time in the grasses, in the dunes. Impermanence is what these represent. So this pattern in the sand, which, I see feathers, I see all kinds of things within this little part of a sand dune. If I went back the next day or even a couple hours later, it would be gone. And that's that impermanence idea. The shadows change. The fence isn't necessarily in your old and rustic, but in a way it is, because it's not a painted white picket fence, not refined at all. Patterns in the sand, temporal. And then I believe we're kind of close to the end, but I've been photographing some painted barns in North Carolina for the last 15 years. And what I've been doing is I've been documenting the fading of these barns. They were painted by a group of artists many years ago, 15 plus years ago, coming from New York and Japan and all over the country. And they call themselves the Barnstormers. And for whatever reason, I have just fallen in love with these barns. And every year another one is gone. Maybe sometimes one or two are gone, and people keep asking, when are you going to stop going to these barns? And my answer is when the last one falls, because every time I go to these, I'm in a different headspace. The weather is different. The light is different. The gear that I use is different. Everything is different. And I find new things to photograph in these old, rundown, fading barns. So these are just a few examples of that. And none of these scenes are repeated. So every time I go, this is a little bit artistic interpretation, but some of the barns are gone. This one is gone. This one is still around. I don't understand the painting on this barn, but I love the color and I love the vines and I love the peeling paint. This barn I used to love photographing, and I called it Book Hen. And so I got this far. And then another time, here is where that same scene was. And then the next time I came back, the barn was gone. It had burned down. And this is an infrared image of a barn that I knew when I was photographing this, that it was the last time I would ever see this barn. I knew that it was just inevitable. The light was terrible, but I just knew I had to capture it. So I photographed it in infrared, which is great for high contrast, and processed it in black and white. And the next time I came back to my barns, I was correct. It was the last time. In fact, when I go now, all of the barns that were in this particular area, they are all gone. And there's no evidence that they were ever there. And that's just that overriding idea of nothing lasts, nothing is forever. So if you're attracted to old things and rundown and sort of, the grungy stuff, for example, photograph it while it's there. Don't wait, because the next time it could be gone. And then we have almost overlooked beauty. So when I was when I turned 50, I gave myself a little road trip in Colorado with an SUV, and I kept seeing these white flowers. And there was no place, I'm by myself, I'm a female, young enough, let's put it that way. And I needed a safe place to stop to see what was going on with these white flowers. They were everywhere. When I finally did stop, they really didn't trip my trigger. But if you notice behind the white flowers, you see, I was like, oh my gosh, those are huge dandelions. And so I took a few closer shots before I said, oh gosh, that's what I really need to photograph, not these white flowers that are doing absolutely nothing for me. Well, we know that dandelions are at the end, so they become the puffs, and then they're done. So I go back to the car and I get all of my stuff that I need, my macro lens and all kinds of other little attachments, including a tripod, and I start photographing. And that is when I was just like, wow, I could have missed this if I just poo-pooed the white flowers and got back in the vehicle and kept on going. But because I slowed down and I looked around and I noticed these things, which are called goat's beard, by the way. They're not dandelions, but I'm quite sure they're in that family. This is what happened. So it's in that noticing, it is in that slowing down, it is in looking for the potential for something that's beautiful, in something that most people want to mow off of their yards. So there's this and this. Just sort of a series of an example of why it's important to go out and be a little bit more open to possibilities and to look at things that aren't necessarily super duper shiny and super duper perfect, to see where there is beauty in just about everything. I'm in an antique store, and these are wood planers. I didn't buy them, but I photographed them. The top end of a paper umbrella with a lens baby. An old window. So not only do we have an old window frame, but I also see a cross, and extended this interpretation into a more artistic look. Peeling paint on the end of a pontoon boat. I see a surfer dude. I don't know if you do, but that's what I see. There's a little bit of imperfect spelling here, but this again is that element of work and the beauty in hard work that I appreciate. And I was an English major in college, and I love correctly spelled words, but I thought that was really appropriate for this particular boat. And well, these are no longer alive, and they were really just sort of scattered about in a parking area where boats put in and come out. Well, we have one male and we have at least three females, and I made this arrangement because I have that kind of twisted sense of humor, but he was a ladies' man. But I made something that somebody else would have just run over with their car into something a little bit different. And then just as sort of a wrap up here, we have all kinds of tools that are at our fingertips to take things that the situation may not be perfect. Lens Baby, for example, manual focus, they have all kinds of effects, and I use Lens Baby a lot. And Lens Baby for me, and some people use vintage lenses, which I haven't gotten to yet, but they use them as creative tools to make beautiful things that are sort of on the edge. Old sheet music. This is from down near where I am on the coast, but these are tools of the trade in terms of fishing, way, way, way back. A little net needle. Old tree that to me kind of looks like the scream. Infrared is another tool to use for imperfect light. It's perfect for that. Here's an imperfect scene. The light was somewhat awful, and infrared and motion blur. Not much happening in the forest, but motion again. Maybe with flowers, not all the petals are perfect. So if I can find one petal and do something with it, these are some of the places that I'll go. This is one petal of a dahlia. This was in 2020. I did a lot of stuff inside on a light box. First entire season of spring that I had been home for, oh gosh, well over 10 years. So I did light box stuff, and I went out in the neighborhood and I cut things down, and I did cool things that were fun to me, and I learned new things as well. Oops, wrong way. I learned more about textures. I let tulips die and photograph them in a light tint and added textures. More on that, just making something that was not quite where I wanted it to be, and pushing it a step further. And then these are on the edge of being done. You can see that the leaf areas are dry and just about ready to pop. The official name of these escapes me, but the generic name is hairy balls, and they're in the milkweed family, just so you know. And so I photographed them inside, and then did a little bit more formal portrait of this on the way out, even though I just caught it sort of at the right time to be able to cut it and capture this. Created some still lifes with it in all phases, trying to take something that was a little bit unusual and not quite what everybody would go, oh yes, can I photograph this? And do something that for me worked its way into that category. The dead tulips again. More dead tulips. I'm currently letting some more dead more live tulips or cut tulips die to see how gracefully they can fall into this state. And then here we've got sort of this very imperfect anemone, a broken bottle. I scattered some seeds and created this on not a light tent, but just on a swoop. And then as Roberta had inferred, you know, that perfection. Well, in between the perfection keys, there is me. And there was a time when I guess I made the lemonade with being bald. I had super duper long hair. I was young, and that was my thing. And in order to still be here, I had to do some things that obviously other people have done. And I just said, you know, I'm gonna twist this around. And this is not perfect, but I'm gonna make it as trying to make this time, at least a memory of it, as beautiful as I can. So that's what I did. And then to wrap up, this is me also. So you saw me bald, and then here I am that yellow flower. So in that 2020 spring that I never thought I should be having to stay home, just like all the rest of us, I ordered in therapy, I ordered in flowers, and so I had a bunch of ranunculus, but I was not in a good place. And so as I bring this outside onto my back patio to photograph, I'm looking at it and I'm just struggling to say, well, gosh, you know, these are supposed to be beautiful, but I'm not feeling it. And then I looked at the hanging, drooping yellow ranunculus, and I said, you know, there I am. And so I photographed this. And when I brought it in, I said, you know, that's only part of me. And I need to twist this around and find and make this beautiful. So again, another one of those perfect personal images for me that is representative of a moment, but maybe this can also help you who perhaps haven't gotten out of your house and photographed. I still hear people staying home and locked up. Order in some therapy and find yourself some beauty that is not perfect, and just put something together that means something to you. The Wabi Sabi is the beauty in imperfection, impermanence, and incompleteness. So I think that we can all go out or even find in our home things that reflect those concepts and those ideas and do something wonderful with them. So find beauty in the heart of the ordinary, everyday things, and keep in mind and remember that nothing lasts, nothing is finished, and nothing is perfect. And I have, you didn't think an assignment was coming. You don't have to report it to me, but just an idea of something that if you're struggling to get out, here's an assignment for you that relates to the Wabi Sabi, based on the things I've shared, based on the things that you've kind of taken in. Connect with the subject and how it conveys those ideas of imperfection, impermanent, and incomplete. And then take those pictures and then process however you feel led to create an image that has that Wabi Sabi feel, that embraces those ideas. And with that, I say thank you. And here's some of the places you can find me. And I'm going to stop my share.
Questions, everyone? Anyone?
Everybody's muted, I think.
Yes. Mute yourself and ask questions if you have any. That was wonderful, Jamie. That was really great. I really enjoyed it.
Thank
It
you. I
was
appreciate
really,
it.
really wonderful. I enjoyed it too.
I did too. It was beautiful.
It's the kind of photography I like to do. And I don't get as much opportunity as I'd like.
You know, I can tell you that I can walk around going all kinds of places. I don't live in a very big condo, but I can go in my office. I can go just about anywhere in my house and find things that are in that Wabi Sabi vein, and or walk outside my condo and into the neighborhood and find just little things, you know, and kind of zone in on that.
I think some people have the ability to do that, and I tend to miss those details.
So
But-
that's an exercise.
Yes, it is.
Good exercise. You know, think about, you know, I mean, my grandmother was a major hardcore hoarder. And I wish that instead of my mother going, okay, it's all going, I could have had sort of a crack at the house with salt and pepper shakers. It's, you know, funny little things that you wouldn't think would mean anything. Salt and pepper shakers, colored metal cups. I don't know what I would have found, but I would have had a Wabi Sabi field day in my grandmother's house. You know, so when I go to thrift stores, I find things that I connect with. I collect old milk bottles, you know, because we had a milkman we had a milkman, and there was a note in the bottle that said, I want, 3 things of this and cream on the top of those. And so there's, when we connect dots from what we grew up with, I think it's easier to find ways to photograph in that vein of appreciating. How many milkmen do you know?
Not many
glass
anymore.
bottles. I don't think they're anywhere. So
When you go to these abandoned places,
Mhm.
first of all, how do you find them? And second of all, how do you get permission to go in?
well, okay, yeah. So that laugh must come from a trespasser. Actually, the old barns are out in the open, and they have been fair game for years. The big rule there is don't go inside, not only because it's private property, but because it's potentially unsafe. The denim mill. For years, I do workshops in Georgia and do grist mills and Old Car City and whatnot. And for years I said, oh my gosh, I wish we could get inside that. And then I saw somebody post a picture and I go, that looks like that building. So I message, and then I Google, and I just hunt for who's the contact person. And I just sort of try and find somebody. I'll knock on doors sometimes, do you know who owns this? Do you mind if I photograph? And I think that what happens is that when you approach anyone, and it's their property or they know the person who owns it, when you approach them with a sense of appreciation, and bringing your camera doesn't hurt. But when you ask permission instead of forgiveness later, because sometimes I know of some people who do that and they have been arrested. I don't want to have an arrest on my record. I want to be able to go back to these places and then photograph them again. So it's really kind of some people will tell you how to get permission and other people are not. And those people, shame on them. The only time I will not share where something is if it's private property and that person has requested that I keep it that way. But otherwise, really just talking to people and connecting with, like the fishermen, the old boats, just talking to somebody on the dock and saying, do you know who owns this area? And saying, is it okay if I bring, 5 photographers or 6 photographers here to photograph? Some people will say, no, I'd rather not. You respect that. If they say yes, I'm like, yeah, and I go by myself first, and then I bring people to share that. So, yeah.
Hey, Jamie, I remember me and 3 other guys called the Westbridge Boys. We go out on Fridays to everywhere, and you're more than welcome to come with us one time to Zanesville Pottery Factory, half falling down building. But we do that ourselves. What you have to do is get in the car and go take the back roads. Well, 4 of us get out of cars with cameras. We have large format, medium format film cameras. We just go crazy.
Yeah.
Permission? We don't think permission.
Don't need no stinking permission, huh?
I have a question.
Jamie,
I have a question.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I never heard about the Wabi Sabi, like you said.
Right.
And is there any way, that you can learn more about this? How did you end up learning about this Wabi Sabi?
Well, I think I learned it backwards because I loved to photograph all these old things, and not everybody finds an old rusty car or a broken down house beautiful, but I do. And so then someone said, wow, that's so Wabi Sabi. And so, I Google, and there are books and there are websites, and, I was talking with, I missed my note paper. Anyway, the lady who runs this,
Oh,
Donna?
Donna, me? Uh-huh.
Yes. So
Yeah.
I was talking with her earlier, and there's a whole vein of Wabi Sabi interior design. So in a house that embraces that Wabi Sabi concept, you're not going to see a whole lot of very refined vases and arranged flowers. You're going to find probably like a lot more. And I don't have any space in my house, but you're going to find dried flowers and things, wood and elements like that, as opposed to very refined objects.
I like
But
to have
yeah.
I like to have the website like she just posted. I was not able to catch the whole thing, and also maybe check it to the library and see if I find books because I'm very interested. I'm very interested in that. And
Yeah, so Roberta just posted a website in the chat, and at the very beginning of the chat, I put my website. I can type it again if you want, for anyone interested. I do send out trying to type and talk. I do send out an e-newsletter. And I only send it out once a month. So if you do sign up for it, the most you're going to get is 12, because I don't send one out if I don't have a blog post to accompany it, to offer something for people who maybe are not ever going to come in a workshop with me, but I want to share ideas and things for people to think about. So.
thank you.
Okay, Jamie, the question I had for you was at Old Car City. Now it's been at least 5 years since they've been there, but probably more. They've been building an ark. Is that completed yet?
No, it's not. It's not complete. Every time I go, and I really go every year. I'd love to go twice a year, but I go at least once a year. So the next time I'll be back is, April. Dean, the owner, he's just this eclectic, very creative. He's hardcore Wabi Sabi artist, just embracing all this old stuff. But yeah, the arc is not complete. It has some signs on it and sayings, but no, it's not done. I honestly don't know that it will ever be complete because he gets sidetracked with other things.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you've noticed the chat, Jamie, but you're getting some really great compliments about how wonderful the presentation was and how inspiring it is. Carla says, inspiring. I get how your mind works, Jamie.
It's a very twisty, turny mind, but it works.
Yeah, wonderful presentation. Thank you. There's a bunch of those. Excellent. Thank you. Wonderful picks, really interesting. Linda says Meadow Salsify. I think she was talking about one of your.
The goat's beard.
Okay.
Yeah, I bet that's what it was. Yeah. But for the longest time, I thought, man, that's the most gigantic dandelion I've ever seen. And had I been able to ship it home and know that it would be intact, oh my God, I would have had a field day. But it was just on the side of the road, and I was able to hear traffic coming from both directions, which really needed to happen by myself.
Jamie,
Uh-huh.
when you developed the concept of things that were imperfect and aging and so forth,
Mhm.
do you ever photograph people with that concept in mind?
I don't photograph people, but I mean, God, look at us. I look at old pictures of me, and I didn't have all these wrinkles and spots and little, my skin was elastic. There are people who do studies of faces, people who do studies of people's hands, and I think that translates. I mean, particularly black and white images of hands. You know, one lady I know is doing a series on working hands. So I'm photographing the boats and the ropes and the rust and all of that. And she's trying to talk to, you know, one of the boat people and say, can I photograph your hands? Right? Because that's what she's attracted to, but that is that Wabi Sabi concept. Yeah, for sure.
What is your standard equipment, Jamie, that you take with you? It sounds like you said you use the lens babies quite a bit. And do you have an infrared camera, or do you have a converted digital, or is that something you do in post?
Oh my God. You know what? I have more than I ever thought I would ever have. I really thought, you know, I don't need all this stuff. And then it just sort of keeps finding its way in. And I don't have gear acquisition syndrome. I really don't. Some people give me stuff, and that's how I acquire some things. But to start out with, when I'm out shooting, I start out with color. I shoot Nikon. I still have a DSLR that is my backup, but I'm shooting the Z6 and Z6 II. I have converted infrared cameras. One of them is full spectrum, where I use filters to change the wavelength because I like flexibility. And so one of my Nikons is going to be converted so that I then can not really ditch my Canon full spectrum RP, but so that I can use it as a loaner in my workshops. And so I can use all of the Nikon stuff that I have. I have a roller bag full of lens babies. I have 3 different bags of infrared stuff. I have stuff that never makes its way out of the cabinet. I really have way too much stuff. And I drive a lot of it around. You know, like I was a Girl Scout. So what is the Girl Scout? You know, got to be prepared. I pack clothes. I'm a just in case packer on clothes. I've gotten a little better, but you know, don't we all pack things that we only move it out of the suitcase because it's in the way of something else that we're really going to wear, you know? So yeah, it depends on the light in terms of, sometimes I'll shoot infrared and color at the same time. Other times of day, it's really just an infrared day. I shoot the lens babies not only for flowers, but for old stuff and different scenes. So I like the flexibility of having a variety of creative tools.
That's good. Very interesting.
Thank you.
What that tells me is your grandmother's child. You hang on to things.
Well, yes. Now, let me tell you, just in case any of the rest of you are sort of in that same category. So she was hardcore hoarder. I am a hardcore collector. And there's a difference. So a hoarder can never let go of anything, because to a hoarder, everything has value, even if it doesn't. A collector is able to let go of the things that have lived their life that no longer have a use or value. So
I like the difference.
yeah, there is a difference. There is a difference. Now, I have a huge collection of dead flowers. This is not a New Year's resolution, but one of the things that I know is that I'm going to collect more flowers, and they are going to die. And so I have this little project that I'm doing with all my dead flowers. I'm de-pedaling them, and I'm putting them in plastic bags. And I'm going to think up, you know, in the back of my mind, I have the wheels turning, like, what can I do with these petals? They're all different colors, shapes, textures. And once I do that, all of those dead petals are going away. That's a collector.
Great idea. I like that. I like that.
Used to work in a camera store, so you know that helped
Yeah,
with
but
your
you know, I
collection
was-
of things, right?
Well, yeah, and mostly because somebody might have been throwing something away. What? You're throwing that away? That's going home with me, you know. But no, I didn't buy a whole lot at the camera store.
No, you were given a lot of stuff though.
I was.
I just
yeah.
happened to know that because you told me. So
I know.
anyways.
I know.
That picture of you that you put in between two
Uh-huh.
somethings
Perfection.
where you, that's a beautiful picture.
That was making a damn lemonade.
Yeah, no, that is a really beautiful picture.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was, you know, we have to, you know, even like if we extend that, not so much to what I was going through, but, you know, we all go through crap in life. We just do. And so if we can find some way to say, well, you know, all this looks like absolute crap and I'm not happy with it, but I'm going to find one good thing. And I'm going to embrace that one good thing. So that's what I did there. I do have funny stories about being bald, but that's another day. And you know, the thing was that was 29 years ago, right?
I was going to ask, but I was afraid.
Yeah, no, 29 years ago. So if that were to happen to me today, guess what? I'm walking the streets bald. Back then it was not cool, you know?
No.
So it was wig time.
Now it is. Now it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Any other questions?
Dick Wood, you are a Wabi Sabi expert. Can you hear me, Dick? You're looking down. Dick, you are also a Wabi Sabi expert. Do you have any questions for her? And you're muted. You're muted. Oh, well.
No, I can tell you that there's another photographer I know in North Carolina, and his approach to Wabi Sabi is completely different from mine. And I watched his program, I don't know, about a year or so ago, and I was like, well, you know, photography is an interpretive art. And so his way of interpreting is way different from mine. And I appreciated that.
Who is he?
His name is Fran de Respinas.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Right. Okay. Anybody else have any questions, comments?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. De Respinas.
I think your background influences your photography too. Your educational, your life experiences educate how you see things.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, actually, I grew up on Long Island.
Whereabouts on Long Island?
Suffolk County.
Suffolk County
Blue
here.
Point.
Where?
South Shore. Blue Point.
Brentwood.
Okay. Okay, there you go.
I helped build Patchogue Holbrook Road when I was in college.
Okay. Okay. I was
We're
there when
neighbors.
they built Nichols Road.
Nichols Road, right? My in-laws lived there.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Small world.
It is.
See, she says it right. She's a Long Island. Don't make fun of me, guys.
All right.
By the way,
Well,
if you're ever in Ohio, call us up and we'll give you a ride with the Westbridge boys. We'll find some decay in place. We find it all the time.
wow, that's quite an invitation. I never got an invitation.
I might have to take y'all up on it.
Please do. And I'll bring some good pizza from Long Island, okay?
Oh, that'd be great.
All right.
Be great.
I gotta go, folks. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was a great presentation. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jamie. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Roberta.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody.
See you.
Good night. Happy New Year.
Night.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Thanks again, Jamie. Bye.
Bye.